I'm going to give you a bunch of tips on how to increase your speed, how to play faster. And when I was a young buck, I wanted to be the world's fastest guitar player. And as I became a guitar player, a professional guitar player, making a living at it, and I realized I wasn't getting paid for the quantity of notes, I was getting paid for the quality of notes. Consequently, that pursuit fell by the wayside, as did the shall I say, the practice of it. You know, I didn't spend as much time trying to play fast because it just wasn't being required in most of my playing. And I still can play pretty fast. I probably was faster when I was 20. But I'm going to give you some tips on how you can increase your speed. And there are some that are pretty obvious and some that are not so obvious, and I'm going to give those to you right now. So first thing is, you probably want to have a good setup on your guitar. The easier it is to play, the easier it's going to be to play fast. That kind of goes without saying. But sometimes if you go from one guitar to another, and if one's got higher action or is not set up as well, you'll notice maybe you won't be able to play as fast on that one because it's more work. You have to push the string down further. And we're going to talk about that in a second, okay? Another thing that I have heard a million times when I was trying to play fast and trying to do anything, basically classical guitar, flamenco guitar, whatever it was, I was always told, slow down if you want to play faster, and it made no sense to me. But ultimately it began to make sense as I began to see the increase in the speed. And the reason you slow down is because you want to mitigate any mistakes. The smallest mistake will be amplified as you speed up. Amplified literally, it'll get louder, but it'll also, it will be more extreme. It's like playing golf, which is so frustrating. You make a little teeny tiny mistake on a drive, and that mistake just keeps geometrically gets amplified as the ball travels. And so the same thing's true. The faster you go, if you've got a mistake, or if you've got an error in the way you're playing something, that's not going to get fixed if you just keep playing faster. You've got to fix it. And one of the things we're going to talk about is how to pick, to work on your right hand and your left hand, and then bring them together. Because a lot of players concentrate on their right hand, and they've got this great tremolo where they can play one note fast, but trying to get the left hand to match up to that. And they may even be able to play something fast with the left hand, but they may not be able to get those two things together. Okay, so we're going to talk about that. One of the things you can do too with the picking hand is you could go with a heavier pick. If you're picking with a very, very thin pick, I always felt like a thin pick I was having to wait for it to catch up. Once I picked the string, the pick was bent and it had to flat back into place before I could pick the string again. Now, there are some great and fast guitar players that use thin picks. I can't think of anybody right now, but I know they're out there a lot, and some players really love the sound of a thin pick. If you do play with a thin pick, what you can do is you can choke down on it and expose very little of the pick. And what that will do is that will stiffen the pick and make it feel like a heavier, thicker pick. Now, for years I used these Dunlop. Let's see, that one's worn out. I don't know if I have one here. 1.5, these Dunlop Durlin. Are these Durlin? I forget. I think I'll put a link for them. Okay. 1.5s, 1.5 is very heavy. And then now I've been using these 1.5 gravity picks. A couple reasons. One, they're a little bit bigger. I feel like that's a little more comfortable in my hand. Some guys like smaller picks. Some players like the bigger picks. The other thing I like about these gravity picks, again, I'm not playing fast for the most part when I'm working, but I have it with the unpolished edge, so it's got kind of a weird texture to it, which I like the sound of. Okay, but that has nothing to do with picking fast. The other thing though, I've got for Django stuff, I've got this pick, and I think this is 3.5 millimeters. This thing is super thick, and it's real. It's super easy. I mean, it's easier to play fast with something like this, I think. But I'm fine with the gravity because it's more of an all-around pick for me. Okay, another obvious tip is alternate picking. You got to pick down and up. A lot of players pick just down. Okay, but know that every time you're picking down, you're picking up. So technically, however fast you're picking down, you know that you've got the ability to play twice that fast if you start to utilize that upstroke. One tip I heard too to improve that, improve your speed, is to pick only upstrokes, which is really hard to do. But that can also kind of help you get to that place where you're doing good downstrokes and upstrokes. Another thing that I started utilizing, probably 5 or 6 years ago, which I'd heard mentioned by other players, but I never really put it to use until I started watching mandolin players. And I noticed a lot of bluegrass players and mandolin players who are some of the fastest players. They tend to turn their pick at a 45-degree angle. So instead of being straight on like this, let me see. I'm gonna come up to you. Here we go. Okay, instead of being straight on like that, they turn their pick like at a 45-degree angle. And what that does is, I found that what that does is that allows for the pick, instead of to be slapping the string, okay, instead of slap, 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 you're more rolling over the string, okay? And that kind of brings me to the next point. But like I said, if you're rolling over the string, it's a smoother motion as opposed to, it's also a rounder tone. Let's see. Let me change tones here. Sorry, I got this big heavy gain thing going. So I find that I also like the tone of the instrument a little bit better, the tone of the string, when I am kind of slapping, nippy, kind of bright sound. It's a little more rounder, hollower sound. So turning the pick at a 45-degree, you don't have to go all the way to 45 degrees. You can go 30, 40 degrees. You don't need to get out a protractor and measure it or anything like that. Okay, so another thing you want to do is minimize your extreme movements. When I was talking about the picking, we're talking about the 45-degree angle. Also, what you need to do is pick very shallow. Don't pick too deep. The deeper you dig in, the deeper you're going to have to dig out. So if you almost barely touch the string, as opposed to, if you dig really deep, it's gonna slow you down. But if you just kind of brush, let the amp do the work for you, okay? Turn up your amp and you can let it do the work for you. The other thing too is, don't flail your fingers on your left hand. I used to take, like when I was teaching guitar lessons, I would take a record album, put it right here so that the student would feel the album if they flailed too much. And I would even stand up against a wall where the wall was right here, so if I flailed too hard, my fingers would hit the wall. And that would train me to kind of keep it a little bit less, everything closer to the fretboard so it doesn't have as far to travel. Because if you bring your hand way out here, it's got to come all the way back. The same thing with the pick, digging deep. Those two things will really, if you work those together, you will find that you will definitely increase your speed, okay? And that's one of the things you want to do too. If you're working on something that is difficult or you're trying to play faster, memorize it. Not just the left hand part, but also memorize the right hand part. So if there is a requirement for you to do some kind of weird picking pattern, then work on that as well. Figure out what's the most efficient direction to be moving your pick for the phrase, and then practice slow and build into it, okay? So you kind of figure out what's the best fingering for the left hand, what's the best picking pattern for the right hand, memorize that, and then start putting it into a faster routine. You'll start speeding it up, okay? And that's what brings in our friend the metronome. We've talked about it many times. The metronome is a great tool to chart your practice. It's also a great tool to keeping those fast licks in time. I mean, how often do we do something and we get excited, we're playing some fast lick, and we get to the final note sooner than we should? I find that you tend to rush. If you've got the speed and you can play at 120 miles an hour and you only need to go to 100 miles an hour, sometimes you go 110 and you get to where you're going too fast. That's really common. So if you practice with a metronome, or even better than a metronome, practice with a drum groove. If you have an Apple, you can just do GarageBand and just drop in a loop. It's free, and then just loop it and practice to that at the tempo you want to practice at. It's a little bit more fun than playing to a click. But the great thing about a metronome, and you can do this on the computer too, but the great thing about a metronome is that it's easy to chart your progress. You can go, okay, it was 100 beats per minute this week, 102, 104, 108, 112, whatever. You can go every time you up it, you can make a note, and then that's kind of encouraging, and that will keep you going as well, which is another, actually, I didn't even think of it as a tip, but basically being encouraged that you're seeing progress will make you play faster ultimately. But that also requires work. You got to put the work in, and then you'll start to see the progress. The hardest one for me is relax. I find that if I'm not, before I started this video at the beginning, I was trying to do that opening lick and I kept screwing it up because I was nervous because I knew the camera was on. Because I knew you were going to be watching, and then I didn't want to screw it up because that's like, well, what kind of teacher are you if you can't even play? For me, I tend to get nervous, when the red light is on and I've got a difficult passage I've got to play, or if I'm playing a live gig and I've got a passage that I have to play and I know everybody's going to hear it or whatever, I tend to be nervous. And if you're nervous, you're probably not going to be as fast, you're probably going to mess up. You need to relax. You need to kind of get whatever part that is down so good that you're not even thinking about it. Almost so that you can do it while having a conversation. I don't know if I can have a conversation while I do this, but I think I can. Not as clean as I'd like to be, but that's kind of one of the things you want to just kind of, okay, it's cool. Everything's good. Don't worry about it. Don't stress. Just do your job. Okay? And then one of the best ways to get fast in coordinating the two hands is to do little target boosts, little bursts with a target note. Okay, as simple as this. Play a C scale, the first 5 notes of a C scale, so we have C, D, E, F, G. And you set your metronome to, let's see, we're going to set it to, let's go to 120. Okay, now, so 16th notes are here. Just start on 1 and end on 2. 1 E and a 2. Okay, now that may be faster than you can play right now, but what I want to do is I want to go from this note to... You can work up. And by going up, what you're doing is you're kind of helping your hands get used to different size frets, so that you're not like playing great here and then awful up here. You want to be kind of spread your practice routine throughout the neck so that you're getting equal time throughout the neck, because you're going to want to be able to utilize the entire range of the guitar. And then what you can do is other shapes, like if you want to do like chromatic, where you're picking 4 notes on 1 string and then 1. Or you can do 5 on 1 string. You could do pentatonic. Have a plan with your right hand though. But you can do these little bursts, and you can get these up pretty fast. And then if you're having a hard time getting fast at all, I'm going to turn this off because it's annoying all of us. If you're having trouble getting speed at all, it's probably because you're trying to do too long of phrases. If you just do a short little phrase, and I'm not talking about tremolo picking where you're on 1 note, I'm talking about actually playing notes, a phrase of some kind, because phrases are ultimately what you're going to be playing. And so if you can get a little phrase down, you'll be surprised how quickly you can increase the speed of that phrase. Not only that, then you can start adding notes to that phrase. So instead of being a 5-note phrase, you can make it 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 notes, 20 notes, whatever. But then you can start building it up. Also practice it descending. You can do it even like that. You could go up, down, and up the neck. And you can even put more time in between if you want to go 3, 4, 3, 4, 3, 4, okay? So I hope this helps. It's a lot of tips to kind of absorb, I know that. But if you start to implement some of these, or some that you haven't implemented before, you should start to see some increase in it. If you want, start maybe filming your progress, and then if you want to put it up on YouTube and send it to me in one of the comments, I'll be happy to check it out, okay? I think everybody would be happy to see your progress, and I want us all to kind of grow as guitar players together. That's kind of the fun of this. That's kind of why I'm doing this, to help you grow. So that's it. God bless you guys. I'll talk to you soon. Oh, here I go. I got to play something fast. Oh no.